When I bet, I like getting something back, win or lose. That's why we're excited to announce our new partnership with FANATICS Sportsbook. It's the only sportsbook that gives you fan cash when you bet, win or lose. Use fan cash on all Knicks, NBA, or other fan gear, as well as bonus bets, collectibles, and more. It's the most rewarding place for fans to place their bets. Download the FANATICS Sportsbook app now and let the fan cash flow. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Connecticut residents, call 888-789-7777. Massachusetts residents, call 800-327-5050. New York residents, call 877-8-HOPE-NY. Maryland residents, visit mdgamblinghelp.org.
Hey there, Knicks fans. How you doing? It's your boy, Jonathan Macri, with you for another episode of the Knicks Film School Podcast. Recording this at 9:51 a.m. on Friday, June 27th. The NBA draft is done. And the Knicks had a quiet couple of days, which we are going to talk about in a moment. Before what will be, I think, although you never know because crazy shit happens in the NBA, our final cap or no cap of the season. And if it's cap or no cap time, you know that means it's time for the one, the only Jeremy Cohen. Hello, Jeremy. How are you, sir?
Hello, John. The draft is behind us. Glad that happened, I suppose. I can't believe I fell for it, though. I thought it was going to just be, all right, they're not trading up. They'll just take someone at 50. And then lo and behold, the Knicks said, hey, but what if we did some shenanigans? And it wouldn't be a draft without Knicks shenanigans. Trading down one single spot for the draft rights of an international player that, as Fred Katz pointed out, they can't even trade for something of consequence because of the fact that it was over 9 years ago when he was drafted. So just a masterful trolling job by the Knicks. And that's that.
It's very rare that you see a move in the NBA that there is quite literally 0% chance that it has any consequence on anything that the team is doing. This was one of those rare moves, and you knew that because, like, this was literally Brock Aller saying, I'm just bored. And I'm going to make myself laugh, and probably several dozen people around the league who know how sick in the mind Brock Aller is, because he clearly doesn't need the draft rights to another player because he has the draft rights to like 18 different players under his belt. And they didn't miss out on anybody because they just moved down one spot, and this was clearly the kid they were going to take anyway. So yeah, shout out to Brock. Well, before we get to the conk, what we want to start, I mean, we could talk about who they drafted. 6'8" wing, Mohamed Diawara. Am I pronouncing that correctly, Jeremy?
I believe so.
Sure. Let's go with that.
You threw that to me and all the pressure hit me. I was like, great. Now I'm the one who has to be the arbiter of someone's last name.
So I'm not the asshole.
Yeah, you're just pushing it on to me. It's like, oh, well, if I feign ignorance, but you're the expert here. So if you get it wrong, it's all on your shoulders. No, sir. I refuse. I refuse that level of culpability potentially. So I'm going to say, I think that you pronounced it perfectly.
Sure.
But that's great. I think.
Yeah, I mean, look, he's a big wing, raw offensively. I mean, as with probably half of the guys in this draft, if not more, the jump shot is going to be, maybe the thing that determines if he's a real NBA player or not. Seems to have the right sort of attitude. If you listen to what he says in interviews, like, I know defense is what's going to get me on the court if I ever get there in the league. He's going to play in summer league. Apparently, we don't know what his contract situation is going to be. Although I have a feeling Jeremy's going to be able to tell us what his contract is likely going to be, or at least what it is likely not to be. Friends with Pacome Dadier. But it's a project. I mean, Sam Vecini is the best in the business when it comes to this stuff, and he didn't have Muhammad in his top 100, which doesn't mean he's might not become something. It just means that he has a long way to go before he is something. So we'll see if anything comes out of this. But as has been the case with many of the Knicks draft day moves over the years, this seems to be more financially driven than anything else. At which point, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Sure. Well, the Knicks stashing Diawara would mean that they don't have to worry about his finances this year. It also could be, I'm of the belief where players taken at a certain point in the draft and a certain range, if you get even anything out of them rotation wise, that's a win. The expectation of them to do more than that, it's not to say you can't find talent that late or you can't find undrafted talent. Of course you can. But the list of players who did not pan out, who either were in that range or went undrafted versus the list of players who did, who were in that range or were undrafted, is a lot larger. So my expectations for Diawara, just in general, or for any of the players taking that slot, are on the lower side. That being said, you don't have to worry about his salary this year, as I just mentioned. So if you're the Knicks and you're focused on winning now, then sure, having that type of player on your team, you don't really want them to count against the cap. And you can proceed with doing other things. And if every penny is going to count, that's an important factor. I think the other thing too is there is talk amongst fans of, hey, what if the Knicks actually took money and bought a draft pick? Well, they put all of the money.
I was going to bring this up next. Yeah.
Yeah. So all of the money that would have been, you're allowed to send out, because you can send money in and receive money, but they're two different pools. So the Knicks sent out all the money they could already, and that was as part of the Karl-Anthony Towns trade. See, it says that cash considerations were included in that trade, but it doesn't say which team sent it. But we know it had to have been the Knicks because the Hornets received the cash and the Timberwolves play the entire season above the second apron. So they couldn't have sent cash. Otherwise, it would have hard capped them at the second apron, which means that the Knicks were the team to send cash. I believe it was around $7.2 million. So then there's the prevailing thought of, well, couldn't the Knicks have used cash next year and then made the trade official this in the new year and all of that? And yes, they could have. But the question is, how important is a second round pick to them? And could the money that they have to spend be better used for win now players? Of course, you can't spend money. It's on a separate pool of free agent signing or anything of the sort. But if you were to do a sign and trade, if you needed to grease the wheels of a larger deal, anything that you had to do, that's where the cash matters more, not how do we trade in to getting this pick with a roster that's already crowded enough and can be added to in free agency and via trade. So that's likely why the Knicks didn't, but we'll see what free agency and the trade market bring, because that could be the differentiating factor between why you don't spend right now.
Couple things. Three things. One, yes, to everything you just said. Two, I wonder, and I look, we've been talking about it for quite literally years now at this point, that the Knicks are intending to stay under the second apron this season. I wonder if their thinking also was like, there might be a 1% chance that we may find ourselves in a position where we want to go over the second apron, where we will need to go over the second apron this year. But is that like even a 1% chance? Is it worth it to go up and get a guy, and spend the money right now, as opposed to just like keeping that option in our back pocket? Because as of right now, the Knicks, there's nothing restricting them from going over the second apron. Again, as of today, that could change very soon. Probably will change very soon. So that is one thing I had in the back of my mind. And then the other thing, just from a roster standpoint, like, again, we've been going through these cap or no caps and you've been laying out the roster. Like, if you're a team that is trying to contend for a championship, which the Knicks obviously are, you kind of only have so many spots on your roster for young, unproven players who you're not 100% sure are going to be able to contribute. And my guess is that there just wasn't anyone that they felt in terms of like what it would have taken to jump up and get the player was going to be worth the roster spot. Again, that's just my guess, especially when you got like McCullough out there, who is not even signed as of right now, but like, if they're looking at it like, well, would we rather have any of these kids and again, spend the money to go up and get him or trade an asset to go up and get him? Or would we rather just have McCullough in year 2 after he's been in our system for a year? Like, I think that all kind of had a lot to do with it. Long and the short of it, I know people are going to lose their minds because people always lose their minds over draft stuff. But like, I this is very much a nothing to see here draft for me.
Yeah, the roster spot is a good point, especially because if you traded up, even if you wanted to take that player and put them on a 2-way contract, then you could, but now you've ruined the opportunity of giving them a rookie exception. And a whole point of trying to trade up to that top 10 of the first or of the second round is because you want to have a first round talent signed to a contract that's one way and advantageous for you. And yes,
like
absolutely. Exactly. They didn't sign Tyler Kolek to the 2-way. They signed him to a straight rookie exception deal, even gave him a little bit more money, made him the highest paid second round pick ever. So yes, with the roster. Okay. If you are a fan of running it back, that's 10 players under contract, assuming Huck Porty comes back right there. Then 11 with McCullough, as you mentioned. Then you want to add a free agent with the taxpayer mid-level exception. That's 12. You've already got 12 players under contract. Where you need to get to 14 at minimum, but where is that rookie going to see time? So I'm in agreement with you because of how many players already need to see time, and that's before the Knicks have done anything else. Now, I would imagine if there were some shattering, a roster shattering move in terms of quantity, that the draft would have exposed it. Last year, we were talking about what could the Knicks do with their picks and all of that. And they walked away with Kolek, they walked away with McCullough, and they walked away with Huck Porty. I don't believe they even entered the draft with 3 picks. And it was a testament to saying, hey, we're going to need multiple roster spots. And now, mind you, the way that they did it was they were flexible. They at first just had Kolek on the exception. Then they had McCullough and Huck Porty on 2-way deals. I think McCullough even took a little bit of time to sign. Then they made the trades that they made. And that's when they really needed to bring other guys into the fold. And it was good to have those rookie exception type players. But the only one who really got it was Kolek, because Huck Porty, they turned his 2-way into a minimum deal. Point being, I think that the second round, if the Knicks had bought into it or found a way to get into it more, would have shown that they had other moves that featured more players. They can still make trades, but I don't think that they're going to be at a point where they're desperate to add bodies, because that they'll be in a good position with what they've got.
I'm nothing to add. Like, there's a lot. Like, I guess the thing that I want to say is there is a perception out there for sure that the Knicks just don't care about like the draft, or the Knicks don't care about second round picks, or this is when Leon Rose goes on vacation. Like, that's not the case. Like, everything is considered within this front office, even if it, and oftentimes I think we mistake inaction for lack of attention, or lack of care. And I just don't think that's, I'm the one who's been very critical of the front office probably over the last few months. And I just don't think that's a fair read of the situation. Before we get to the last cap or no cap, or at least the last scheduled cap or no cap, we should mention Masai Ujiri parted ways with the not the Toronto Raptors, with the whatever the Canadian group is that owns the
MLSE, Rogers. Yeah.
And look, he's a name that's been in the past at least made out to be something of James Dolan's white whale. And he's now available to be hired seemingly by anyone who wants. So I don't know that there's anything other to say. I mean, there's already going to be a ton of pressure on the front office this season, as there is with literally every person in the organization. And now your jury's out there. I mean, I don't know. What else is there to say about this? Maybe I'm missing something.
Can he coach?
Well, I don't know. Maybe they should find out. Hire him.
I just think it's an incredibly bizarre process. For all the scrutiny of the Knicks not having a coach, I'm very curious to see how it's received of Masai Ujiri after the draft, but before free agency.
Well,
relieved
that's their
duty,
issue,
or at least party ways, right? Which shows an incredible level of disconnect and dysfunction. Where I don't quite know what he was cooking. I'm still trying to figure out exactly how it comes to pass, but it's related to the Knicks and their division. I wasn't expecting and don't expect the Raptors to be much of a threat, but I kind of liked the middle ground or the mediocrity that they were experiencing as a division rival. You don't necessarily want to see them succeed, so life's easier for you. And now clearly they're going to go in a different direction, one that could be up as opposed to just floundering. So pretty shocking.
If you took Ujiri's name off of all of the moves and you just looked at how the Raptors have gone about their business for the last 4 years, right? Whereabouts, you would be like, this person doesn't really have a plan. Not necessarily like this person is terrible at their job or this person doesn't know what they're doing, but just it is all very much evinced like, what is the plan here? Like if there's a plan here, it is very hard to decipher, and we just don't know what that plan is. So, I still think Ujiri is like a very smart basketball mind, and he is probably even more importantly than that, one of the most respected figures around the NBA. Is obviously an incredibly engaging guy. He has his kind of, hooks in a lot of different things in the larger basketball world, internationally, especially. But like, I remember the conversations that we had when the Knicks needed a front office executives, and we were like, "Oh, can we give up? How many first round picks can we give up for Masai Ujiri?" And it's like, those days are done. Quick break to tell you about America's first ever USDA organic THC gummy. You know the words. Shout out to Cornbread. Yes, Cornbread, the source of your healthy happy hour. It's a natural and healthier way to experience a carefree moment. Cornbread's THC gummies offer a balanced sense of happiness and relaxation. Well, how do they achieve that balance? My favorite thing about Cornbread is it's just the right amount for me as someone who is not a regular user of these sorts of products, but still wants to get that relaxation without feeling anxious or paranoid like some other cannabis edibles, which is why Cornbread's 1-to-1 THC to CBD ratio is perfect for me. They have 10 milligrams of THC per gummy, which is just the right dose, and it gives me everything I need without any of the stuff that I don't want. If you are looking for a healthier way to enjoy a carefree moment, you have to give Cornbread Hemp a try. They have created the first ever USDA organic THC gummy that is 100% legal. As a special offer to Knicks Film School listeners, you can get 30% off your first order. Just visit cornbreadhemp.com/KFS and use promo code KFS at checkout. Again, that's cornbreadhemp.com/KFS and use code KFS for 30% off your first order. Cheers to a healthier happy hour. I don't have anything else. Anything else you want to cover before we get to the slideshow?
No, I think we can get to the cap or no cap.
Let's see if I could do this and not screw it up. Okay. I think I did.
Cool.
Perfect.
Yeah. So we spent time talking about what avenues of spending are. We talked about trades.
There you go. All right.
We talked about trades featuring a couple star players, but I just wanted to get into the rest of this team, rookie players aside, or rookie contract guys aside, the smaller amounts, just because their values in terms of what they can bring back, not really significant. So just wanted to analyze 5 players, in this case being OG Anunoby, Mikal Bridges, Josh Hart, Mitchell Robinson, and Deuce McBride. Throw some names out there just to show what the market looks like, feel like, if we didn't turn over every stone, then wouldn't really be doing our jobs here. So before I talk about trading your favorite player, if you're listening to this, let's get into it. So OG Anunoby, he is earning about $40 million, 39.6. He's entering year 2 of a 5-year contract. And for any large scale deal, he would carry the heavy lifting for matching salaries. Of course, this is not including Karl-Anthony Towns or Jalen Brunson, one of whom earns more, one of whom earns less. But yes, OG being the financial linchpin in any non-cat big money trades, that's what his role would be this summer if he were dealt. But it's really hard to find a suitable replacement of his archetype. OG Anunoby missed out on being named to the all-defense team by a few votes. One spot, right. So his value is there. And I understand some have issue with his salary. His salary is not, even if it were, say, $5 million less, that salary is not stopping the Knicks from getting a non-taxpayer mid-level exception signing. They still have too much money on the books. It would still hard cap on the first apron. It wouldn't really matter. I never have had much of an issue with this, especially when he's kept healthy, because also if you do ever want to trade him and you need more money out than coming in and you need to aggregate salaries, it's fine if he is quote unquote overpaid, which I don't think he is that much. And I think if you were able to involve him in more offensive actions, instead of what he kind of just created, I think there are different sets that you could run with him that could probably enhance his value further. But even still, defensively, he is really up there and his value is good. It'd be nice if he hit corner threes at the same clip in the playoffs, or rather in the regular season or in the playoffs as the regular season. Missed a lot of shots from there, but there really aren't a ton of guys who make sense that are non-stars. And then you're talking about who are you adding with OG Anunoby, but we're talking about Lauri Markkanen, who had a down year. Who knows what the Jazz are really up to? They say they want to be a better team, and their draft picks would indicate that, sure, they want to keep adding talent. I also see a team that if they finish top 8 in the draft, they don't have to give up a pick to Oklahoma City in 2026. So maybe they try to tank. But even still, Markkanen doesn't strike me as the type who would be adding, given if your nucleus is Cat and Brunson here. He doesn't really cover up the weaknesses that OG does.
This might be a hot take. Maybe it's I don't think I'm being a homer here, but I think more teams would rather just have OG Anunoby than Lauri Markkanen at the price point. Like I know Markkanen was like kind of a borderline All NBA guy a couple of years ago. I don't know. I just think I think if you're trying to win games, I think OG is just a cleaner path for more contenders than Markkanen is. Yeah.
I agree. He's a more additive player in that you don't have to scheme your roster around one player versus another. There aren't a lot of weaknesses you have to cover up. Yeah. Zion Williamson being another name. Zion, of course, has played in more than 30 games, I think twice in the last 5-6 years. His best ability.
I'll give you his games played since entering the league. Go in reverse order: 30, 70, 29, 61, 24.
And missing entire seasons.
Sorry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Forgot about that one. I left out a big 0 in that number. There it is. Yeah. Sorry about that.
No, that's fine. But that's another, if we're talking ballpark salary, Derek White is another guy. Obviously, the Celtics, if they do trade Derek White, they're going to hold him at a premium, as they should. He's a very good player. I shouldn't say very great player, but he is an extremely high quality starter who gets close, but not quite close enough to all-star range.
I think the comp is I think this is good. Makes a third more than Derek White does. And I think the vast majority of teams would rather have Derek White on his contract than OG Anunoby on his contract. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe that's wrong, but I don't think the gap is huge between the two of them.
Well, he's earning less, Derek White, on his next contract. So that's certainly beneficial. But in terms of the type of player that each of them is, it's just a different archetype. But
yeah,
I hear you.
Sure. Yes, 100%.
Yeah. And then Devin Vassell, another wing who certainly on the younger side compared to OG, although it's really probably about maybe 5-6 years difference in age, if that. Vassell could be a good player on a winning team. We haven't seen it yet. I'm not saying that's his fault. The Spurs have not been a good team while he's really been there. But you still look at it and it's, well, is he guarding forwards quite in the same way that OG is? Is he knocking down the same corner shots? Is he able to create as much on ball as OG is? Is he as good of a defender? He is not. So at that point, you're kind of just, you're going backwards, in my opinion. You're not advancing anything forward if you do that type of move, because if you're the Knicks, you're trying to find a ways to say, how do we get from, up here to even further up here? And if it's for OG for Vassell, it's not, you're not moving up. And you're not even really saving that much financially. It's not like you get Vassell and suddenly you have access to the non-taxpayer mid-level exception. Signing that player, you'd still be hard capped at first apron and you'd still be going over it. So you'd have to make other consequential moves. So I think those are the only 4 names that really make sense in that area that don't involve, quote unquote, mega all-stars. Market, and I know, made it the all-star team or two, but not really. It's just a different category.
Just in terms of looking at, you see the number, it's a big number, and I'm going to make a comp. It's not a perfect comp, but in terms of his place in the pecking order on the team, in terms of the sort of value he adds to the team. And I was thinking about this player over the last few days because I was writing a little something about him for the summer. Tyson Chandler, when he was here, took up about a quarter of the salary cap at that time. Mm-hmm. OG Anunoby takes up about a quarter of the salary cap. We think differently about it because Tyson Chandler made $13 million a year and OG Anunoby makes about $40 million a year, a little bit more than $40 million a year. But that's because the cap has, gone up threefold. But I think you have to, just I don't think, well, Tyson Chandler was here. Nobody ever looked at wow, that's a lot of money for a guy who only, he doesn't score a ton of points. And you need these guys to win. I understand that a lot of people, myself included, have concerns over how are all of the pieces fitting right now. That doesn't mean that I want to get rid of OG Anunoby. And I just this is a good exercise to show if you're going to move OG Anunoby, what are you getting back that makes it worth it for you where you're not taking a step back as a team? And if there was ever a year in the history of this franchise that they cannot take a step back in the present tense, it is this season. So I don't know. It's tough to find. It's just tough to find a move.
Yeah. Getting better and finding a player like OG at the same time, it's not really doable. Yeah. If it were, it would exist. And I just don't see the path. Let's talk about Mikal Bridges. He's earning $24.9 million. He's entering the last year of his deal. He is extension eligible on July 6th, but that's to officially sign it. There's nothing stopping the Knicks from agreeing to an extension with Bridges now, since the NBA finals have ended. The salary would start at 140% of the 24.9. So the max extension year one would be $34.9 million, then 37.6, 40.3, and then 43.2. This is all assuming an increase starting with the 8% raise, which would be a max raise for the max extension he could sign. And again, I just find it a little peculiar, just a little. And who knows, maybe between the time I say this out loud and the time that the episode releases, this changes. but the Knicks not having an agreement with him just leaves me wondering.
You mean already? As opposed, like, so for instance, like we heard about like the Kyrie and the Van Vliet deals have already been reported, and you're saying it's a little. You've raised half an eyebrow that the same thing has happened with Bridges.
I have, especially a player like Daniel Gafford. He's getting extended. And
I forgot about Gafford.
Mm-hmm. And I believe that Gafford's actually trade eligible as well because of the finances involved. The thing with the Bridges contract is, I mean, unless, and it's possible, maybe they're negotiating where Bridges is comfortable taking a little bit less than that. And they're working through those details. So I don't mean it as a cynical half an eyebrow raise necessarily, but it's still, okay, they're not on the same page about an agreement, or else we would have heard about it. So why is that? Why is that the case? Is it because he's taking less? Is it because there is no deal? It's not like the Knicks can go up higher. Why did the Mavs and Kyrie agree to Kyrie declining his contract or his player option and signing a new deal? Well, part of it was we need more space to find a replacement for you while you're out, Kyrie, and we can get that in the taxpayer mid-level exception, but we don't have the room to sign that if you opt in. So if you opt out and then you increase off of that, then we are able to find a replacement. And then when you're back, presumably towards the end of the season, that's when we've got depth and you. And so that was obviously agreeable to him. Fred VanVleet, the Rockets traded for Kevin Durant. They wanted some flexibility. They declined that option. They got a much more team-friendly contract, or it's basically $25 million a year. Great deal for them.
And they had all the Zach Lowe made this point. They had all the leverage in the world, and they used it very smartly.
Very smart of them. So they were able to make that happen too. It's a different situation here because, again, it's not like the Knicks can go higher than $34,860,000 in year one of that contract. So if the issue is Bridges saying, I want more, there's nothing the Knicks can do right now. They can't restructure this year's contract to then give him more money. They would just have to wait. And if there's trepidation over getting Bridges under contract, because, you know, if he wants to go over, if you're the Knicks, that's probably a death knell in some way to the marriage that you have with Bridges, because as we know, the Knicks love their team control.
So I also find it slightly interesting that we haven't heard anything about this yet. And I wonder if it is for this reason. So Fred came on the other day and basically was talking about how he thinks that the Knicks and Leon Rose will try to negotiate. And why wouldn't they, right? Every good businessman tries to negotiate. Leon Rose is a businessman. If I'm Mikal Bridges, I'm like, all right, looking at next summer, I don't know what the list of teams is that are going to have cap space, but there are going to be teams that have significant cap space. The Wizards, at this point, I believe, have like $110 million worth of cap space. And like, again, that's just one team. But like, if you're talking about, is there a team out there that would give Mikal Bridges 5 for? Actually, no, they can't. You can't offer 5 years for. So it would be 4 for. I don't know. 4 for 180. Let's just to throw something out there. You would think it might be a team like the Washington Wizards who are just like, hey, we got all this money. We know like the very best players in the league are not going to want to come play here right now. So let's get some tier 2 players. And then if I'm Mikal Bridges, I also might be tempted to look at the guy who I shared the court with for much of this year, OG Anunoby, and see like, oh, well, he got basically the most that the Knicks could have given him, and they had no issue giving that to him. And here I am. if I was Mikal Bridges, I would guess, I would imagine that I would have the self-confidence to think that I am at least as important to the team as OG Anunoby, if not more important. And already I can't functionally sign for as many dollars as OG Anunoby signed for. And now they're coming to me and they're talking about me taking, whether it's even less money or it's a team option or whatever negotiating Leon Rose is trying to do right now. So I would wonder how he would feel about any of that. And I guess the last part that I would wonder is is it possible the Knicks just haven't started negotiations yet because they're like, hey, we want to see what else is going on out there in the world. I don't think that's the case, but these are all things that I'm wondering. That's all. They're all things.
Why don't you think it's the case
that the Knicks haven't gone to him yet?
Well, no, in the. Oh,
I think
what else is out there?
Oh, well, I would think the Knicks are going to want. Well, no, I shouldn't even say that. I was going to say the Knicks, it's always good to have information, right? You always want more information than less information. So my thinking was well, you want to at least start the negotiation because you want to find out where Mikal Bridges and his camp are in terms of what they're looking for, what they might be willing to accept, what they're not going to accept, all those things before you potentially go have those conversations. And then I call myself because, of course, Leon Rose already knows where Mikal Bridges is and what his people are looking for. So they wouldn't even need to really do that. Yeah, I don't know. Something about this, though, I just feel like they may reach an extension and the whole thing. I don't know that either one of these sides is running to the tiny table to sign the contract. Is that unfair of me, or do you agree?
No, I don't think that's unfair. I guess the Bridges obviously fills a need for the Knicks. No question about it.
Yeah.
I think the other thing to consider, though, is if Mikal Bridges went to any other university, how fans view the Knicks acquisition of him would be entirely different. And of course, if you said hey, if a situation were different,
hold on.
It would be different, obviously. Yes.
Sorry, how are you factoring in what they gave up for him? Is that baked into what you're saying?
Well, what I'm saying is I don't think it is a 0% possibility that the Knicks saw an opportunity where they said we can get a good player and we can give up a lot of picks, and we recognize this is a lot for a player who in a vacuum it's likely an overpay, but it's the salary portion where that salary slot with Bogdanovich was going to go to waste. So you had to extend it. You had to turn his $19 million into something. And then the Knicks were able to do that. And they were able to find a player who, of course, had trouble during the regular season, even still struggled at times during the playoffs, but then was a huge factor in key moments as well.
Yep.
And still had bright spots nonetheless, even with a coach where he and the coach didn't exactly get along. I'm merely saying that sure, he could very easily re-sign here and it's pen to paper. It's done. I just also, and this isn't even really being a conspiracy theorist, this is just pondering. Why is it that if we talk about the Knicks and how they've tried playing long games and all of that, why would it be there's no shot that the Knicks went out, got Bridges, saw him as a value opportunity, and were able to figure out what else is next from there? If not this offseason, in the future.
I'm sure you would agree with me that they did not trade for him. And you're not saying this, but just to be very clear to anyone listening, you're not saying that they traded for him with the intention of trading him for something else. But it's more like in the back of their minds, hey, this is a good asset. This is a guy who is going to be extraordinarily cost controlled for the production he gives you for the next 2 years. So if there was a situation where a year from now XYZ were available to us, well, then this could be of use. I just find this so fascinating because I think on the day that Tom Thibodeau got fired, actually, no, I shouldn't even say that because a lot of people made that about it was either Cat or Tibbs, and I never saw it that way. I've always seen it as Mikal or and like there was no world where I said this during the year multiple times. I said I just don't think there's a world where Tom Thibodeau and Mikal Bridges are both going to be on his team next year. I think the part that maybe we should perhaps start thinking about more is it a possibility that neither of them are going to be here next year? Because if the front office is like being honest with themselves, yeah, sure. I guess they could believe that like the coach was like the total reason for like all of the issues with the starting five and everything. I've never believed that. I don't think you believe that.
Well, I think the one player saying I can't continue if Tibbs is coach here, like the assumption, of course, is that it's Bridges because he's the one who has more team control, or at least more control in the situation since Cat's under contract, for example. But the truth is, we don't know if it's either of them. It's purely speculating on if it is either of them. It's easy to understand why it might be one or the other, but those of us who are looking at the situation.
Do you really think that's a thing that Karl-Anthony Towns would say? We don't know Karl-Anthony Towns.
No idea. But I don't think that it came down to one or two players for why Tibbs is no longer in the building. I think
I don't either.
Right. It was larger than that, but I don't think it was quite as the Bridges versus Tibbs. And I agree with you where there's still a real world possibility where neither of them is in the building. And we can say that because we know one of them is already gone.
Yes,
and I wouldn't say there is a 100% chance that the other one, the one that we're talking about, is in the building to start next year as well. Recognizing that, of course, there are targets out there that either may not make sense or may not be attainable. And we'll go over that in a second. But I agree with you from that sense.
All right, let's move on because we've spent a lot of time on this.
Sure.
I thought that was an important conversation.
Yeah, it's still they haven't come to an agreement. Ballpark salaries, we just talked about Derek White. Of course, if I'm the Celtics, I'm not looking for Bridges to be the replacement option. Probably looking for more than that. We just talked about Devin Vassell as well. Same thing. Even with Vassell under contract for an extended period of time and younger, that's also a reason for why the Spurs might want to keep him as opposed to getting Bridges. But there's a level of creation that Bridges can provide. But I still I don't quite see the fit as much.
He's a better defender too. Let's just, for any misgivings we have about Mikal Bridges' defense, he's a better defender than Devin Vassell. And for all we know, he's a better defender than Devin Vassell will ever be.
Sure. Jaren Jackson Jr., who we've talked about quite a bit, where the salaries match up. I mean, that's a given. Aaron Gordon, who, if I am Denver, it doesn't make the most sense because Aaron Gordon's basically, would it be fair to say he's their OG Anunoby, at least the closest comparison in terms of what their roster looks like? They're not the same. Obviously, they do different things, but in terms of size, the defensive acumen, ability to guard forwards.
He's like a combination of Josh Hart and OG Anunoby for them. But yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So, I think that really good player. He extended off of the last contract he has. So they may not want to rock the boat. And another being Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, who was just traded to Memphis as part of the Desmond Bane deal, where, Caldwell-Pope is older by a couple of years. He had a season from hell last year. I still feel like he's going to rebound from that because I think not having Jokic certainly was a factor, but he's also benefited from having strong passing players, like played with LeBron, did pretty well there too. He's been in good situations before. There's a hope for him, if I'm Caldwell-Pope, that perhaps being with good playmakers, I'm able to be a better version of myself. A different offense could help. But then it's the question of, is he going to work and how well will he work in Memphis's offense? And would he be good here? Sure. I mean, you could stick him in the corner or do something similar. But again, it's an older player. He's got a player option after this year, which is something that the Knicks probably don't want to entertain because you would imagine Caldwell-Pope opts in. But what happens if he doesn't? There's just more to the calculus than what we see. So it's not the level of player that really makes the most sense.
Look, KCP. You could argue that part of the cost for Bane was, or the reason why the Bane cost was as high as it was to unload KCP, who is now very clearly, after the year he had, a negative asset. That said, and again, a lot of people out there are like, well, Macri hates Mikal Bridges, so no surprise he's saying this. Whatever. I want the Knicks to be as good as possible. And there's absolutely a small part of me like, man, what can we get in addition to KCP where the Grizzlies would act, like, how much would we be able to get from the Grizzlies on top of KCP, to do that. So, but the Knicks, they're not going to do that. So
I'd be surprised. And the only name there, Cameron Johnson, another one, but that's another trade with the Nets. So I'd be a little surprised on that one. But
can we get
the one name,
back?
Yeah. Well, the one name that really from that list makes sense from a fit perspective is Jaren Jackson Jr. Again, basically all I just want to lay out is how it works. Where any trade for the Knicks, if they wanted Jaren Jackson Jr., it has to be by the 2026 trade deadline. The reason being Jackson's a free agent, an unrestricted free agent in the summer of 2026. But the problem is that then the Knicks would be hard capped at the first apron because that's how a sign and trade would work. So if you're the Knicks and you are desperate for Jaren Jackson Jr. and you want to make it work with Bridges' salary, you've got to find ways to add other salary or other money, or I should say other assets to making it work, and using Bridges as a main piece that goes out salary wise and kind of ringing the rest of some of your roster and the assets you have to add into that. Because if I'm Memphis, maybe I don't want Mikal Bridges. Maybe I'm comfortable tearing it to the studs. I mean, the way Memphis is so fascinating to me because when you look at the West, so many of those teams are competitive, and it just takes one team to take a dive to the bottom of the conference. And congratulations, in a very good 2026 draft class, you don't have to do a lot to be terrible. Like if you're the Grizzlies and you've just traded Bane, this isn't even Knicks related, just generally, if you were to trade Jackson and Morant in any capacity, congratulations, you are going to be a bottom 3 team.
Yeah.
Full stop. So is that something that the Grizzlies want? No idea. But it's basically, if you are looking at the Knicks, if you're looking at Jaren Jackson Jr. and you're looking at salaries, and if you're also thinking, well, what if you traded OG Anunoby for Jaren Jackson Jr. instead? I mean, you could potentially find a way. The money situation, it depends on how it could work, because maybe the Grizzlies go into cap space, maybe they're able to offload other salary back to the Knicks, all of that. But then you have a question of how are these players operating in the same space? So maybe, it's not, I know in the cap rules, everything around me, the idea of OG for Jaren Jackson Jr., I talked about how the money was a little bit more complicated, but not impossible. But the money for Bridges and Jackson is 1-to-1. It's just, how do you get the sides to match up where Memphis feels like it's walking away with, we're trading one of our, if not our best players. We got to get more out of this.
So the only thing I'll say here, one, the only way Jaren Jackson Jr. could extend off of his current number. That would be the biggest surprise of the fucking offseason, because he doesn't make enough to where the 40% raise is going to be enough money. So what has been discussed out there in the ether is a renegotiation and extension, which would require Memphis to do some things.
Some things being create more cap space, by the way, to then use all the rest of the cap space
exactly
to pay Jaren Jackson.
So the Jaren Jackson Jr. has to want to extend in Memphis. If he has any misgivings about spending his future in Memphis, and then you're Memphis, you can say, all right, well, there's no shortage of teams who want Jaren Jackson Jr., but Jaren Jackson Jr. also holds a lot of cards here. And in the fact that this is upcoming a cap space summer for a lot of teams, And he can hold it over a team that is thinking about trading for him and say, hey, I'm just telling you, like, if you trade for me, I'm giving you zero assurances that I'm going to re-sign with you next summer. In which case, again, Jaren Jackson Jr., if he wants to try, if he goes to Memphis and says, I'm not extending here and I'm going to throw my weight around a little bit behind the scenes, if there was a team that he wanted to go to, that team would be in a pretty advantageous position. And that team would also have to be fairly confident that upon trading for a guy who could be a free agent, that they were going to be able to resign him. And I would just rewind the clock back to when the Knicks traded for OG Anunoby, and they were in literally this exact same situation. And they had the confidence that they would resign him, and lo and behold, they resigned him. Cost a lot of money, but they resigned him. So that's why I just think, like, until Jaren Jackson Jr. renegotiates and extends, this is absolutely a situation that for my 2 cents, every Knicks fan should pay very close attention to.
Agreed. And I recognize that with what the Knicks have, it could be perceived as just quickly written off of. It's not going to happen. All I'm saying is, right. Well, that's the thing. Why? I'm just saying, don't underestimate the leverage that Jackson Jr. has, which isn't a lot, but it's enough to say, I want to make a decision on where I go. And Memphis, it's not here. You know, I could walk to Washington. If they've got that much money, they sign me. I mean, the free agent market largely sucks next year. That's the thing that with the Wizards, where I was seeing tweets about they're going to have so much money if they're going to be comfortable going for it. And I was like, what is going for it really?
Because nobody's free agent anymore.
Right. So, but then you do have a player like Jaren Jackson Jr., who is a free agent. And if you are Washington and you found
Mikal Bridges potentially,
right? Like there you go. Exactly. You're just taking mid-range shots all game, and that's all that matters. But there are paths to at least build a formidable team and use the pieces and the picks that you have. You can transform your team relatively quickly. It just takes a player to get there. And it's just that it's merely the presence, the looming leverage, where if you're Memphis, your hand might be kind of forced here. And that's why I'm so fascinated about what they do next. Because if they've traded Bane, what is the sell to Jaren Jackson Jr.? Hey, Jaren, we've created more cap space for you so you can sign more money. Yay, money, woo, right? But see, here's the thing. We actually have made our roster younger, which is good. More durability, woo, future. But it's worse at present moment. So, you still got that money. That's great. But yeah, how would you like to sign for more of it, but perhaps the team's worse? That's essentially and what Memphis is to grapple with, unless they make some other large move.
Like, they also just spent the lottery pick, obviously, a year ago on Zach Edey. They traded, it was a big move by them. I understand Jaren Jackson Jr. can play the 4. But like the partnership with Towns would be very interesting. And then the last part on the Memphis side of this, it's like, again, if you're dealing with a potentially limited list of teams that are going to feel comfortable trading for a guy who could walk in a year, well, if you could get a player in the door like Mikal Bridges, and then Mikal Bridges is willing to extend with you once you trade for him, well, then that's, that might be kind of appealing. And we know that Memphis has already tried to go out and trade for Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby for that matter. But yeah, that
was also, yes, but different time, depends on what their organizational strategy is.
Same front office though.
Exactly. Yes. It's more, if they're taking a dive, you wouldn't really want to go after one of those players because,
I mean, if they're taking a dive, this would presume that they want to just remake the team around John Morant. But if they're taking a dive, then that's a different situation.
They may not want to take a dive. They may just want to keep being better and groom talent. And then they could also get good talent in the door, extend them in some capacity, wait 6 months, or get to free agency to extend Mikal Bridges, and then they could theoretically flip them and then keep retooling on the fly. Lots of different options, but I don't think this should be ruled out quite in the same way that others are quick to dismiss it.
No, I agree.
Let's talk about Josh Hart and his upside down headband. He is earning $19.5 million this upcoming season. He's entering year 2 of a 4-year contract. The final season is a team option. There's an argument to be made for moving Hart to the bench, just given where his value lies. He views himself as a starter in this league. It's not to say that he can't or even shouldn't start. It's a question of, is he given the roster in the best position where how he's complementing the other players, you have him come off the bench, but that's to be determined. That is a personnel thing, and that's also going to be a coaching thing. Of course, there's no coach to determine that. If you were to move Josh Hart in any trade, just some salaries without aggregating with too many other players, you've got Marcus Smart in Washington. To me, would rather have Josh Hart. Certainly, Smart's been injured. The shot also not great, has a lot more, I wouldn't say more wear and tear, but has been, he's just as mentioned, been more injury prone than Hart has. There's also the glue guy factor of it all. You have to worry about Marcus Smart and his next contract. Hart already under contract. Once again, Cameron Johnson, who not going to happen with the Nets. Norman Powell, he's with the Clippers. He had a great season for them this past year. He's also, I believe, entering the last year of his contract. So older player and trying to get paid. So I would imagine perhaps he stays with the Clippers. Colin Sexton, another player entering the last year of his deal. I can understand the belief of, okay, let's get someone in the door financially who works and can run an offense. We have decided we don't care about backcourt defense at all. That's why we have Jalen Brunson and Colin Sexton, but I think that would be a real challenge to mask. And unless you're aggregating, say, Mitchell Robinson and Deuce, then you're not there. And even then, you'd still have to add a little bit more salary through sign and trade. So I don't think that will really work. Malik Monk, another player where just smaller guard, but it can do a lot offensively, but kind of hurts you defensively. He's in the middle of a contract. Rui Hachimura, another guy. He'd be a larger wing, really more of a forward, but I'm not quite sure what Los Angeles benefits from in this case. It'd have to be a 3-team deal. Lou Dort, they just won the championship. I don't see Dort going anywhere. Same with Alex Caruso, although I do find it fascinating that they're at 15 roster spots or 15 players on the roster before the draft, and they've just acquired a player, so someone's going to get the boot. Andrew Nembhard, Pacers are going to have a weird season. I would imagine they're not moving Nembhard just in this influx year, and that they're keeping him and they're kind of just rolling with it. Max Strus, where I don't see why this benefits Cleveland. Also, Cleveland taking in more money. That means they'd have to aggregate, which would hard cap them at the second apron. They're probably not going to want to be hard capped at the second apron. They strike me as a team that will be spending above the second apron. So that doesn't really make any sense. And then PJ Washington, who he's entering the last year of his contract, so he needs to get paid as well. Good player. I could see him being moved by Dallas. I don't know about you, but with the Gafford deal, something is afoot because they've got Gafford, they've got Lively, they've got Washington, they've got Flag, they've got some looming money problems that are coming up. They've got a lot of guys that need to get paid. And then, of course, they have Anthony Davis. So something has to give there.
I said this during the draft. If I'm PJ Washington and I am in, everybody's talking about this crazy Dallas front court depth. If I'm a part of that, and I, as you just said, I'm looking to get paid, something about that does not add up to me. And I think PJ Washington is really good. I don't know. Would I do Josh Hart for PJ Washington? I would have to really think about that. But I don't know. It's an interesting guy.
Well, the Mavs probably don't do it, especially because they'd have to aggregate salary. And even though they could find a way to do it with probably the Hardy contract, it's it's still a lot. You're probably looking at Hart going to another team, a third team. I think PJ Washington is an intriguing option. I just not necessarily with Josh Hart.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
So I'm on Mitchell Robinson. He is earning about $13 million, just shy of it. He's entering the last year of his contract. He's extension eligible on July 6th. He can have a salary that starts at 140% of that roughly $13 million. Similar to Bridges, we haven't seen him extend yet, even though he can be extended. A max extension for him starts at $18.1 million in the 2026-27 season. Then it goes to $19.6 million, then $21 million, and then $22.5 million. That's assuming 8% raises across the board, ascending contract. I want to talk about Steven Adams because I think Steven Adams is a good roadmap for the Knicks and Mitchell Robinson, where Steven Adams signed a contract for 3 years, $39 million. Year one, $14.1 million. Year two, $13 million. Year three, $11.9 million. John, I don't know if you realize, I think you do though, you're smart enough to get it. That's a descending deal.
I did notice that, yeah.
So I think if you are the Knicks and you see, hey, one of the best offensive rebounders in the NBA got a descending contract, we also have one of the best, if not the other best or the best offensive rebounder in the NBA. If he can get signed to a descending contract, well, why can't we sign our player to a descending contract? The reason being, just very quickly, and it's not even for this threshold of $39 million. That's a different number. I think Mitch would get paid a little bit more than that. But Adams is going to be 32 next year. Robinson, meanwhile, will be 27. Adams has played in 40.7% of possible games over the last 3 seasons. Meanwhile, Robinson has played in 43.5%. We're talking about regular season games. So not a significant difference there. But the goal in my mind is if you're the Knicks, that Robinson commands another descending contract. The Knicks, of course, do have leverage because if they pay more than whatever the non-taxpayer mid-level exception is, Robinson's going to come out ahead. He's probably not going to be acquired in a sign and trade. Rim runners usually aren't acquired in that way. It just doesn't really happen very much. But the max extension for Robinson, if you had an 8% decrease, if you started that $18.1 million number, then year two, it would be 16.7. Year three, it'd be 15.2. And year four, it'd be about 13.8. So this is how, if you're the Knicks, as you balance your finances, why you would want him on a descending deal, similar to what Adams got.
I love it. I think this is, to me, I think Robinson signs this. And if I'm the Knicks, unless I have to move Robinson this summer for some reason, we've both been putting Robinson in fake trades for I don't know how many years now. Mm-hmm. The notion that he might become, because he's already been with the team for 7 seasons. And hold on, I'm just going to pull up the list of how many it is. I think off the top of my head, it's about 8 players that have been with the Knicks for at least 10 seasons. It is 8. I'm going to read them off right now. Patrick Ewing, Carl Braun, Bill Bradley, Walt Clyde Frazier, Phil Jackson, Charles Oakley, Willis Reed, and Charlie Ward. The notion that he could become the 9th player to spend at least 10 seasons with the Knicks is like, I'm just tickled by that. That would be so cool.
It would be. Yeah. You mentioned we've talked about him in trade scenarios for many years. That's true. We've talked about other players on this list with trade scenarios. So why stop there? Let's talk about ballpark salaries with Mitchell Robinson, because it wouldn't be fair if we didn't talk about it. Number 1, Isaiah Stewart, similar situation, or I'd really just rather Mitchell Robinson in this case. Daniel Gafford, another option. Of course, just got extended and yet is trade eligible. PJ Washington, another player we just talked about, where the Josh Hart portion of it doesn't make sense for the Knicks. The Mitchell Robinson portion makes more sense, but Mitch would have to go to a third team. Doesn't get that complicated, but it's just another factor. Herb Jones. I don't foresee the Pelicans looking to obtain Mitchell Robinson given their draft situation. But if there were a 3-team deal, similar salaries. Of course, I don't really know what the Pelicans are doing. The they're an irrational actor based on how they've operated most recently. So the hope is that you just bank on an irrational actor acting irrationally, and that's a trade. But I would imagine they will prioritize Herb Jones in some capacity. Austin Reeves is another name. Austin Reeves declined a contract extension with the Lakers. Very curious how that's going to turn out, primarily because if the Lakers do not, let's say the Lakers, obviously they love Luka Doncic. They bring back LeBron James on a 1-and-1 type of situation where he can make more money. Then you also have Austin Reeves, and Reeves hits free agency because I think he has a player option. So Reeves hitting free agency, that would then mean his cap hold gets higher. That's a concern. If the cap hold is higher, that's less money for them to spend. So I just genuinely wonder what they do with him this summer. He strikes me as a trade candidate, especially given the ball handlers that they have.
The Reeves thing is fascinating to me because he is like a legit scorer and more than a scorer. He's a playmaker. He's a guy that you like, if the ball's in his hands, like you want that situation, but he is a minus defender. And it's just one of those situations where it's like, I wish I could talk myself into the fit alongside Jalen Brunson and Karl-Anthony Towns, but I mean, that would be tricky.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
But he would make sense on the Lakers. Absolutely. Mitchell Robinson.
Oh, like I'm sure they love him.
Yeah. Isaiah Joe, the biggest thing is, yes, spacing at the wing, great. But I know that Mitchell Robinson can also compete at a high level in the playoffs. Isaiah Joe was not that guy. He was not someone that the Thunder really turned to. He strikes me as much more of a regular season type of player, and then come playoff time is not going to be there to uplift you. So would be hesitant there. Of course, Dante DiVincenzo. Knicks fans are very familiar with him. I think he would have been more of an option if he had been moved as part of a 3-team deal. The Wolves don't need to get another center. They just drafted a backup center from France to play behind Rudy Gobert. If I'm the Wolves, I think I'm just making incremental moves. I'm trying to bring back Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Maybe I'm saying, Naz Reid, instead of opting out, perhaps you opt in and extend, that sort of thing. So I think it'd be harder to pry DiVincenzo away. And if that's the case, if he is, what really helps them get better? It'd be tricky. Moses Moody, I don't see the Warriors wanting Mitchell Robinson for Moses Moody. Matisse Thybulle just opted into his player option. Of course, it's a similar situation with the Knicks as it would be with the Blazers, where basically it's, okay, what's the deal with him? Is he going to be healthy? You can look at the 3-point percentage and go, oh, that looks good, but it's low volume. It's just, you have to pay him. Things that it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, especially with Josh Hart still on the roster. Aaron Nesmith, a great option, similar to with Nembhard. I'd imagine the Pacers just keep him in their down year without Halliburton. Royce O'Neal, I just don't think this is going to happen for a couple of reasons. Number one, Suns aren't going to take on more money. Number two, they just trade for Mark Williams. Number three, and perhaps the most important, Jalen Brunson and Royce O'Neal do not get along very well. And by very well, I mean they do not like each other.
They don't.
And I would imagine firing Tom Thibodeau and bringing in Royce O'Neal, probably not going to go over super well with Jalen Brunson. One of them I think he can understand. The other one might take a little bit more healing. Aaron Wiggins, again, we just talked about the Thunder and their roster crunch, but they could presumably move a player like Wiggins or even Joe into another team's non-taxpayer mid-level exception, get a couple second-round picks back, and not have to take any salary back whatsoever. And then lastly, Lonzo Ball. I know a lot of fans of Lonzo Ball interest in the Knicks as a trade target. I just think if I'm Chicago, do I want to make that move first and foremost? What am I doing with Vucevic? Do I want to keep winning? They're not really winning, but they're not really losing. But from the Knicks' perspective, Lonzo Ball would be a great addition when healthy. The healthy part is the major concern. I think what I saw was he hasn't played more than 35 games in like 5 years. I think it was like a palindrome of 35 games played, 0, 0, 35 games played.
So in reverse order, 35, 0, 0, 35, and then his last year in New Orleans, 55.
Yeah. So if we're talking about health, I mean, yes, the skills that Ball brings probably elevate the Knicks in terms of the spacing and the playmaking and the transition. But it's just what you're expecting back is you're basically saying, hey, we'll be lucky if Lonzo Ball, even with this medical staff, plays more than half of a season. That's a good position to be in.
And like just for any of the like any idea of a straight up trade, Mitch for player X, I'm not trading Mitchell Robinson if I'm not getting back a at least a very good defensive center. Mm-hmm. And it's just tough to. That's why like the Kessler thing is, as I always found it so fascinating, because he makes a lower amount of money. So is there a world where you're sending a Mitch out and you're taking something else back? But like it's just, yeah, I just don't see them doing that. I just would be very surprised.
Well, let's get a little nuts here.
Sure.
So here's the thing. The non-taxpayer mid-level exception is projected to be $14.1 million. It can now be used as a traded player exception, as we've talked about before. The Knicks don't have this exception, but other teams do. So theoretically, Robinson's contract, which is just under $13 million, could fit into that non-taxpayer mid-level exception. So he could go to a team that has the non-taxpayer mid-level exception. And that would then, one option, if the Knicks got nothing back in return, that would generate a traded player exception for the Knicks, right? So they're sending Robinson's $13 or so million out, and they're getting nothing back, except they can pocket the $13 million avenue for any player making up to the $12,954,546 slot during the new year. You can't use traded player exceptions from previous years, but you can use them when they were created in the new year. So using this, the Knicks can take back any salary at any point, whether it's the off season or the middle of the season or right before the deadline. And then trades that would otherwise not be legal now could be. So for example, right, you just talked about Walker Kessler. I made sure not to say Kessler Walker this time. Walker Kessler makes a whole lot less than Mitchell Robinson. And if you did the trade straight up of Mitchell Robinson for Kessler, that would not be viable because the Jazz don't have cap space. They can't take on some of that money while the other, but if they have access to the non-taxpayer mid-level exception, which they likely would, the Knicks would be able to move Mitch's salary into that salary slot, creating a traded player exception that then Kessler goes into, and then the Knicks would still have the amount. It'd be the difference between Robinson's salary and Kessler's salary. That amount would be how much they could spend, not in free agency, but in a trade at some point in the season. So that's where the Mitch portion compared to any of the other players that we've talked about gets pretty fascinating, and why you can move pieces around in a different way. You see that I have part one. Well, that would imply, of course, there's a part two. And there is. The idea with part two is that Robinson can be extended and subsequently traded. With Daniel Gafford, for example, the contract details, maybe he stays. But it's also possible that given what we know with the bonuses, it was a 3-year, $60 million deal. But 3 years, $54 million, there's a way for the Mavericks to actually move him in a trade, even though they just extended him. It would just have to be 5% raise or 5% decrease, which would still be viable. So year one of the salary would just need to be low enough where Robinson could be dealt, and it would not require a 6-month trade restriction. And in this case as well, Mitch would not receive 8% increase or decrease. It'd have to be 5%. Because whenever it's a trade, an extended trade or a sign and trade, it's always a 5% max one way or the other. So that's why if you were to see, for example, Mitchell Robinson agrees to an extension, if you are a Mitch fan, it doesn't necessarily mean Mitchell Robinson's here to stay.
Unless there are 8% raises or decreases.
Unless that's the telltale sign. And if it's above a certain amount. So that's where the factor will come into play. Him staying doesn't mean he's staying. It could just mean he's agreeing to a new contract and subsequently being dealt. So that's the complexity of the Robinson situation. Any thoughts?
Again, I hope Mitch Robinson stays. It's the unfortunate reality that he is just the most fungible salary on the roster. I guess we're going to talk about Deuce in a second, but like Deuce makes so little money, and like, it's a different situation. But yeah, I hope he stays. I hope I get to keep watching Mitch because I like watching Mitch.
Yeah. Yes, Deuce McBride. So he's earning $4.3 million. He's entering year 2 of a 3-year contract. Extension eligible this winter. It would be the 2-year anniversary after signing. I said signing the deadline, but it's really signing the extension. And his salary is low, to your point. It's so low that you'd have to match for a low salary. Basically, you're saying Deuce McBride for Keon Ellis, but Keon Ellis has 1 year fewer of team control. So that means you have to pay Keon Ellis more money in the 2026-27 season than you would otherwise for Deuce McBride. Or you have to aggregate him with another player for a larger salary, any of the ones that we've discussed. Or, and I didn't even put this on the list, it's how do we trade Deuce for a player on a rookie scale contract? But again, that's matched for a low salary. It's just tricky. Doesn't really make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, do you have another slide after this? Because
I do not. Okay. It's very short and sweet with Deuce.
Okay, because I was just going to say, I think Deuce is one of those players where he has more value to the Knicks than he would have on the trade market. I just don't think there's a team out there at this point. It's not, I guess what I'll say, it's not Emmanuel Quickley. Whereas you could have a team like the Toronto Raptors, and there were probably other teams out there besides Toronto who could look at Emmanuel Quickley and be like, we think that guy there is a top 15 starting point guard right there, and we're going to make that investment. I love Deuce, and I like Mitch, I want Deuce on this team. I hope he's here for a very long time. I just don't know that upside reasonably exists. So if you're the Knicks and you're up against the second apron and you got this guy on for 4.3 this year, and then whatever it is, 3.9 or whatever next year, that's just a very valuable piece when he's like good locker room guy. He's great for your culture. He does a lot of good things. So yeah, absolutely.
In conclusion, expect the unexpected with this team. Not having many tradable picks doesn't mean nothing happens. They always find ways to surprise us. The Knicks could still use a big to space the floor. It would really be beneficial if they could find that in free agency or trade. If it's free agency, we'd love to see Gershon Yabusele with the taxpayer mid-level exception. If it's via trade, if they found a way to get Jaren Jackson Jr., that I certainly would not object. And leave little to chance. If you're struggling with team control, you need to find a solution as soon as possible. I feel like the boldest of predictions is that the 2 players who are not under contract the 2026-27 season are not here, right? That's the boldest take. I haven't seen anyone making it. So I figure, why not? I'll make it. I'll make the bold assumption that both of them are gone. And I don't think this is not sourced. This is nothing. It's just, why not? Also, our bold predictions never really come true anyway, whenever we do our bold predictions pod with our friends at Locked On Knicks. So it's just, you want to make sure you close the loop. If you can't get an extension, that's probably not going to help your case. Of course, with OG, the Knicks didn't extend him because they couldn't. But then he hit the free agent market, took less than the max compared to other teams that were offering the max, as reported by Ian Begley. So you just got to make sure you can control what's in your control. And if there are features or details that you can't control, you need to find a way to control them.
Well said. It's how this front office has operated for quite some time, and I don't expect any of that to change now. I don't know, man. Now that we're done with Conk, I want to. I know this line is from some much more well-known movie, but when I think about it from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie. It's quiet out there, a little too quiet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I don't know, man. I don't know what's going to happen over the next week to 10 days. I don't know. I don't think we're going to be sitting here in a week and a half being like, looking at the exact same roster. Something about it that doesn't add up to me.
I've been saying from the jump of the first cap or no cap, I don't think this team runs it back and adds a taxpayer mid-level exception. It would be a level of kind of laissez-faire that they have not exercised. And when they have, it did not go well. They had their worst season. When they ran it back, things didn't happen. Now, granted, they had more assets then than they do now. And yet, when we talk about assets, what are we really saying? We're saying picks. They have fewer picks. It's no question. But they also have better players. And players have good value on the market. And good players have good value on the market. And even if their values have been depressed a little bit over the course of the season, some more than others, there's still going to be interest. So I'm fascinated by what's going to happen over the next few days. Looking forward to our live stream to ring in on the 30th.
The new league year.
That's when the new league year, or at least when free agency opens up, is our understanding. Yeah. So should be a good time.
It should. Yeah. I mean, in retrospect, last summer was kind of easy for Leon Rose. Like the Nets were more than happy to take all those picks, and send us Mikal Bridges. Once you put DiVincenzo on the table, like it was a kind of a no-brainer, I think, for the Wolves. The summer I think, presents more unique challenges. And again, we may very well both be wrong. We may very well be sitting here looking at the same roster in however many days. I don't know. We'll just see what happens. Jeremy, it's outstanding as always. Thank you for putting the time in. And anything else before we get out of here?
I think that's all. Curious what some of the player options and team options these next couple of days look like. So let me ask you this. Last question.
Yeah.
Julius Randle, opting in or out?
God. I mean, the one stalking horse is not a stalking horse. Brooklyn doesn't want him. Brooklyn made their bed the other night. Opting in.
Sure. I think with the Durant saga behind them, he's opting in as well.
My question for you, when we are on here at 4:00 or 5:00, whatever time we get on here on Monday, do the Knicks have a head coach?
Ooh, that's a great question. No, I'm going to say they don't. Because even though they're meeting with Borrego over the weekend, I would presume that they still, June 30th, it's worth mentioning, is also when Jason Kidd's staff, when their contracts expire. And I know Nico Harrison came out and said he's coaching the team. I've also heard Nico Harrison wax poetic about Luka Doncic. He really does. So things can change. So I would imagine that June 30th, especially if there's a chance where a lot of kids' best assistants, their contracts aren't renewed, that there's an opportunity there. So unless that happens and then they seek permission and it's an immediate trade, then yes, but otherwise I'll say no. And I know there are people who are probably wondering about the Knicks and making these moves. How could they make any moves without a head coach? And I understand, but if they're looking for a head coach that's on the same page as them and that synergizes with them, they're probably going to find a head coach that's comfortable with whatever moves they make in the offseason as well. It's not excusing. It's more just explaining.
Yeah,
sure. I bet that they have preferences and they'd like to be consulted. But I think we are also entering a time where head coaching, maybe having a little less say over personnel, a say, but a little bit less. Yeah. When much of the core is going to be there, probably. The Knicks, at the end of the day, will find a team find a coach that maximizes their team the best that they can, and their front office with all the analytics and how forward thinking they are. They're going to put together the best team they know how.
Can we put it this way? If there was a head coaching candidate out there who was like, well, I was going to coach the team with this player on the roster, but now I'm not going to coach the team because you made this move. They don't want that head coach. Based on
now, do they not want that head coach? What is the other job this cycle? That's a good point. I said a few days ago that June 29th was my prediction. I think that prediction is going to be wrong. I think they will not. I agree with you. I don't think they'll have a head coach by Monday at 5:00. Okay. This was great. Thanks everybody for watching. Hope everybody enjoyed Conch season. We look forward to seeing everybody for our free agency live stream on Monday. Obviously, if anything happens over the weekend, we'll be live to cover it. But until then, everybody enjoy your weekend, and we will be back with more fun and games before you know it. Peace out.